And now if it couldn't get any weirder, here's where it gets super weird. All right, ayahuasca. Let's do it. Most people that know me well enough would probably say there's two versions of me. There was the Matt pre-ayahuasca and then the Matt post-ayahuasca. And the two are, I wouldn't say completely different, but definitely drastically different. Now, this might jump all over the place because talking about ayahuasca is there's a lot of things that are hard to put your finger on, right? So for instance, like the why. Why do people do ayahuasca? Why did I do ayahuasca? And the answer for me is there's a saying that you do ayahuasca because the plants call you. I know that sounds weird, but here's how the plants called me. This was 2013, so this was almost 12 years ago. It's crazy, almost 13 years ago. It's insane. But this was before I was really a social media information miner, if that makes any sense. Like I didn't research things on social media. There wasn't X feeds or people to follow for me. I was like still watching movies on burnt DVDs and whatnot, the same movies over and over again at night. So what would happen is that the odd time I was on YouTube, and I wasn't on YouTube almost at all. You know, I would get the For You feed about ayahuasca resorts in Peru, or there was a few documentaries. They would pop up every now and then, and I would go down the wormhole for a bit, and then I would be out. You know, it wouldn't stick. And I had this one reoccurring friend in my life. I called him Jim the Anarchist. And he was Jim the Anarchist because he was into stuff before most. Like he was an old schooler, dress in black, go to the G7 summits, hop the fences, and wreak havoc for the people involved. Like that's what he did. So I always called him Jim the Anarchist. And I would see him, you know, once a year at this coffee shop called Bar Italia. Now, if you're in your 20s or your 30s and you don't work full time in some bullshit job, you ended up hanging out at this Bar Italia. It was like I wouldn't call it like an artist's coffee shop, but it was a people waiting to do things type of coffee shop. And I hadn't seen him in a while, and I would usually see him, you know, once every 6 months or so, you know, something like that. And so I ran into him after I had the itch to figure out this ayahuasca. I was always a fan of mushrooms, but I was too old for mushrooms, you know, like you get to an age where mushrooms are just too much, right? And I was at that age. But I was always enamored by psychedelics and what it does to your worldview. And so I ran into him. I'm like, hey, how's it going? It's like, good. What are you doing? Explain to him what are you doing. I go, what are you doing? And he's like, I am an ayahuascan shaman now. And now, if anyone were to tell me that, I would go, oh, right. But Jim the Anarchist, I understood it for some reason. I'm like, oh, okay, that's funny because I've been, you know, watching a lot of stuff on ayahuasca lately. And that's where he said, well, it sounds like the plants are calling you. And it hadn't stuck yet. The plants are calling me because I still had a little bit of a wall up, like easy now. I just watched a couple docs there. And so he told me he'd been training for like 10 years. So while he was Jim the Anarchist in my mind, he was also Jim the Ayahuascan shaman on his flip side. And he had become this Ayahuascan shaman, and he was doing these, what did they call it again? I was about to say seance, but it's not seance. Can't remember, it'll come to me. Ceremonies. And I'm like, okay, sounds good. I'll see you later. And so my life goes on. I forget about ayahuasca. Instead, I go down I'm looking at what the hell, how did they make the pyramids? I was on my pyramid phase. And then I led back to ayahuasca again. And now we're talking about a year later or so, and I go to Bar Italia, and I see Jim. And I go up to him, hey, how's it going? Good, how are you doing? What's up? Nothing. And I'm like, I've been watching these ayahuasca videos, doing a lot of research on it again. And he's like, it's interesting because last time, the plants were calling you and you said you didn't know if they were. And it sounds like they're calling you still. And I'm like, okay, maybe. All right, maybe they're calling me. And he said to me, he goes, listen, I'm going down to Peru on June 8th to June 26th. You should come with me because I'll be running the ceremonies at Yaku. Can't believe if that's right. It's unbelievable. I haven't said that word in 13 years. Yaku resort. Not really a resort, but that's where he does the ceremonies with, I believe, the Juan Flores. Now, I might be making that name up, but he's also been to Winnipeg. Anyway, and I said to him, I was gigging a lot. I was in a event duo where we would play mashups, and conferences would hire us. And we were always playing. Like every weekend, if we weren't playing an event, we were playing a party or just a gig, right? And so when you are a gig, in the gig economy, taking off gigs, it means just minus money. So let's just say a gig paid $500 or something. Well, if you took that night off, you lost $500 plus whatever life costs, which is always $100 minimum, right? And so I said, I don't think I can do that because I probably have gigs, not really knowing, And so he's like, okay, well, maybe it'll happen again. Maybe next time I go down. I'm like, okay, maybe. So that day I go back and I'm just doing some scheduling of my gigs. And I look at the June schedule and Lord love a duck if those 2 or 3 weeks he was talking about weren't empty, which was maybe the first time in my whole gigging career that there was multiple weeks of no gigs. It just never happens. I always have a gig, but in this little window, there was no gigs. And so we're talking, it was like maybe February or March or something. So they, might have filled up. But at that moment, there were no gigs in this one little slot where he said he was going down to Peru. And so I just went, I'm going to do it. And I texted him, I go, you're not going to believe this, right? And he's like, oh, I believe it, right? But this is what's happening. I'm going to come with you. He's like, okay, well, this is the flights we're taking. Go book it. So I book it. And now I'm on my way. I kind of forget about it, right? Because it's still like months away. And I just live my life playing the gigs, not really knowing why the plants have been calling me. But as the time came to go to Peru, there was a couple things that were going on in my life that I realized had come to a head. One was I was in a relationship that I needed to end. And I wasn't sure how to do it because, she was living in my house and it would have been like, you got to go, right? Always a hard conversation. Plus, my lifestyle had built up to the point where I was just, let's call it, enjoying life to the fullest. Partying a lot because of the gig. I own a nightclub, so there was like endless party, endless women. It was a very fun time in my life, but I knew it somewhere in the back of my mind that it had to end, but I didn't know how to do it. So and at this time, I didn't know this was part of the plant's healing mechanism. You know, one of the reasons why they were calling. So, one of the things I did before I left for Peru was I told the person, I was like, listen, I'm leaving. I won't be back for 2.5 weeks. I'm hoping that when I get back, you'll be gone out of this house, and my life. And so that was not even a big deal, but it was kind of like one of those bones of contention in the life at that point. And so I left for Peru to do ayahuasca. Now, I'll tell you this much. Knowing what I know you have to do in order to go to Peru and do ayahuasca for 2 weeks, knowing that now, I wouldn't have done it, because it's not cushy. There's no luxury. In fact, it's all essentially sacrificial, hard work, from diet to heat, climate, sleeping, all these things. Like, it's not for the faint of heart. So knowing that now, I can't believe I did it. But anyway, so here we go. We fly to Peru. We end up in Lima. We spend the night there. I'm still thinking, oh, this is not bad. You know, Lima, it's a modern city, right? And then the next day, we get up early, take this puddle jumper or mountain jumper into basically a landing strip. And that's it. It was like a town that had an airport for, I don't even know what the hell reason was, because it was like there was the only thing, it wasn't like we took a cab, we just got out of the airport and there was a strip mall there. And that was where the administrative offices of this Mayanta Yaku was, where you kind of like paid your money and then you go, right? So once paid your money, and I think it was, at the time, it wasn't expensive. For 2 weeks, it was about $1,500 US. So you factor in, like, you know, room and board, but we'll get to what room and board actually is. Anyway, it was relatively cheap. But from there, you get on a old 80s Honda 50cc shimmied into like a wagon, and you drive until you drive across the road essentially to a taxi cab, which is a Toyota RAV4. And you fill up the RAV4. There's 4 people can fit in the back and 1 in the front. I was lucky enough to get the front. And we head off. And so you first start driving down a normal road with cement. And after about an hour, that road turns into a gravel road. And an hour after that, you turn into basically a dirt path in the jungle. And after an hour of that dirt path no longer exists. And the driver is driving through the jungle, but he knows, like, he's got to get up on this rock. So, like, there's no road. He's just driving up on rocks, driving up on hills, in between trees. Like, to the normal person, there's no road here. He knew where he was going. And then finally, a kind of path opens up and you get to what looks like a bunch of huts in Peru, or the Amazon jungle. And you get out and you're kind of relieved, but there was this moment where I looked back at the RAV4 and the guy, and he got into it and he started driving home. And at that moment, a certain finality came over me because I realized he's driving away. And I don't think he's coming back, which means one thing. I'm here. There's no second thoughts. There's no, I've made a huge mistake. I think I want to go back to Lima. It was nice there, normal hotel. I'm not sure. You're there and you're stuck. And I didn't realize this at the time because I was younger, but like now that I think about it, it's like, what would happen if like you got bit by a snake or a spider? Because there's spiders everywhere, right? These are the things I think of now. I never thought of that back then. I just knew that, okay, I'm here and no one's coming back. So I actually asked Jim, it's like, when does that guy come back? He's like, oh, in 2 weeks. So there you are for 2 weeks, like it or lump it. And then they show you to your sleeping hut, which is basically like a 12 by 12 wooden bunkhouse of sorts. And there's 4 beds. And in the corner, in between 2 of the beds is a makeshift barrel. No, it's not for showering. It is for going to the bathroom, and it's just a barrel. And it does flush, but they flush it. It builds up, let's just say. And everywhere in this hut is spiders. Spiders, as a Canadian, I don't see. You don't see spiders like this in Canada. The only spiders you see are those sneaky ones that, are out of nowhere. They're very small, and they're like, it's winter, how does this spider exist? But when you go to Peru, everywhere is massive spiders. And they're just there, and that's it. And so what they recommend is that you sleep with a mosquito net kind of entangled around your sleeping bag, which makes sense, right? But then you have to understand that it's like 35 degrees Celsius at all times. So to be in a sleeping bag wrapped with a mosquito net to help you with the spider situation, you're sweating your balls off, right? It's hot. It's hot to be in a sleeping bag at plus 35 degrees. Obviously no AC. And then, so let's just jump ahead. Those are just some creature comforts. Maybe I'll add the food. The food was a vegan type of, a lot of cabbage. It wasn't the most unflavorful thing, but it was just like, it was almost like you were in a fasted state. You're just, it's a lot of water consumption and food, and that's it. No eggs, even, stuff like that. At the time, so now it's time for your first ceremony. And you get to this, it's almost like a pavilion, a small pavilion with open everything. There's no nets, there's nothing to keep anything out per se. And you're looking out into the Amazon jungle, which is a sight to behold. And you lay down on your mat, and there was 3 ayahuascan shamans. One of them was Jim. One of them was the shaman, Juan Flores, I think. And then there was this girl shaman. Can't remember her name. And so you drink the ayahuasca, which, if I could compare the taste to anything, I would say a dark, thick, marmaladian, bitter, like there's nothing good about it. There's no redeeming qualities about the taste of it. It's just, you do what you got to do, you get her down, right? And I had done ayahuasca before that, so let me just preface that. It wasn't the first time doing ayahuasca. I ended up doing some ceremonies in Winnipeg with Jim before. So I knew what I was getting into. But doing ayahuasca in Winnipeg with your buddy in a ceremony with other people. It's strange enough, but to do it in Peru, it's a whole other level. It's ayahuasca maxi full retard, right? And so I knew I was in for 7 or 8 of these because he took a day off. And so the first one was similar to every ayahuasca trip I've ever taken. I was lucky enough that my body doesn't purge the ayahuasca, which happens to a lot of people, both on like puking and diarrheaing sometimes. And you hear it when it's going on. And I would think, though, I would just get like a secondary impulse to puke if I heard puke, but I never did. So I was lucky that way. But if I had to describe what happens in an ayahuasca trip for myself, and I'm sure it's different for everyone, but somewhat similar, is that I download, almost like Total Recall, the failures, successes, sorrows, happiness, disappointments, collapses of empires, heartbreak, loss, death of families, death of people close to you, death of pets, all at once. It's like the collective humanity's sorrow I experience. I feel it all. And you're probably thinking, well, who the hell would want to do that? I agree, right? But there's something completely remarkable about the humbling aspect of that sorrow. And I've always thought that happiness for me is a triumph over adversity and or sorrow. Like, you're not going to be happy if you're, I'm generally happy, but you're not going to be happy over a situation unless there's some sort of, triumph over adversity. And so to me, that's when I came out of it, and it's not easy. Like, you take your deepest heartbreak and times it by infinity. It's like the weight of humanity's sorrow is surging through you and at the same time cleansing you, if that makes sense. Like it's going into every cell, and you're feeling it in every aspect of your body, and it's hard. You don't think you can handle it. This immense sorrow. But you realize halfway through that it's almost like this street cleaner that's coming through your soul. And it's loud and it's messy and it hurts. But as it moves forward, you realize what it's leaving behind is a brand new, clean slate of sorts, filled with new choices that you didn't know existed, or you never gave the time of day to even acknowledge, if that makes any sense. So that's what I experienced. There's a small degree of like hallucinogenic aspect to it at the start. Like there's, for a while, lights. It almost reminded me of like the old IMAX thing. When the first thing you saw at an IMAX, like the colors, right? But it wasn't like a mushroom trip. Mushroom trips, I had way more trippy hallucinations. This one was just almost like an engagement. It's like elevator going up, and then you experience, what you experience. And I've always been fascinated with music and frequencies and how they affect people, the relationships between chords. Why does 1 5 minor 6 4 resolve? What is it doing, etc., etc. So what would happen is that when Jim would be doing his songs, they have a name too. Icarus, something like that. Icarus. The sound of his voice, the frequency at which the vibrations of his voice, his male voice, would throw me into struggle. I would feel the sorrow, the infinite sorrow of humanity's failures. And then when it would get to the girl, her voice in a higher frequency would be like a wave of relief coming over me. And I would, literally roll over to the other side and just be in, I wouldn't call it bliss, but it was just a reprieve from the infinite sorrow I was dealing with. And then it would ultimately go back to, Juan or Jim with the male frequency. And I would roll over to my other side and run through the sorrow and just like deal with it. It's almost like you see yourself chalkboarding your life, what you may have missed in certain situations, things you're doing wrong with certain aspects of your life, and they're all hard. They're hard facts. You're listening to hard facts and lessons about who you are, what you've done wrong, and what you got to fix. It seems crazy. And then, the girl would come back and it would be a reprieve. And then it would last about 3 to 4 hours. And then you're just absolutely fine. Like there's no residual, there's no hangover, there's no, oh, I'm so tired, oh, I don't feel good. You're just absolutely normal after it kind of works its way through. And then, of course, you go to your bunkhouse with the spiders and sleep and sweat all night long. And then the next day you wake up, and I forgot to tell you this, but my Auntie Yaku, the huts are on this level area that's right beside a boiling river. And you're probably thinking, what are you talking about, boiling rivers? Those don't exist. That's what I thought too. But the reason why the water's boiling is because it's coming out of like a volcano. Yeah, there's a volcano somewhere up in the hill, and the water that's running down past this little village is boiling. Like you can't go in it. It'll burn you. And so there's a little stream there with all these rocks. And so what we would do in the day is it would just kind of go rock jumping. But there's an added bonus to the rocks. If you stand on the rocks for too long, out of this water comes ants and spiders sensing that there's an organism on that rock. So you only have so much time on the rock. You can't just sit there. You got to keep moving, or else these things start crawling all over you. It's weird. It's almost like a Final Destiny type of horror scenario. And so if you think plus 35 degrees Celsius is hot, well, imagine your only reprieve is a boiling river that you can't even, put your hand in or your foot in. It's too hot. Covered with ants and spiders if you stay on the rock too long, which is also boiling. There is one shower, which is far right by where you eat, and it's coming down another side of a different mountain, and it's warm. And so that's where you would go and just kind of spritz off, I suppose. And in between each ceremony, they have what's called a tobacco purge. And let me tell you about the tobacco purge. It is probably the most horrendous substance I've ever ingested. Now, this is going to disgust you when I describe it, but this is exactly how it tasted to me. If your dog ate its own poop and then got sick from eating its own poop and puked it up, but it being a dog forgot that puke, which is poop his own poop he ate, decided to eat the puked poop again, and then puked it up again into this little spoonful of stuff. That's what the tobacco purge tastes like. But unfortunately, it never worked for me, which was weird because I remember Jim saying, I've never seen it not work. It's supposed to work. So what happens is it's so horrible, you just sit there and puke for like hours. Like you literally just gag till you are completely vacant of everything. And it kind of is like a clean slate for the next ceremony. So we'll just jump ahead. I'm not going to talk about all the ceremonies because they're basically, essentially, they're all the same. There's a couple of different factors in it, but the last ceremony I did was the life changer. Because what happened is, after dealing with the sorrow of humanity in my life and everyone I've ever met or haven't met, it was as if some plant, lizard thing approached me and told me, I am now going to enter your body. At this point, you're not really asking questions anymore. And almost like, you know how in Spider-Man, he turned into the Black Spider-Man? I've never seen the movie, but I've seen clips where his red and blue Spider-Man suit slowly turns into black. Well, that's what was happening to me from my feet. They were, every capillary, every vein, every hair was turning green, almost like a plant. And it was just coming slowly through my entire body till it finally got to the back of my throat. And it was if there was this plant like reptilian thing in the back of my throat, and I could hear it sitting there going, but it was this deep rumble breathing of this reptile plant-like being, right? Like if you look down my throat, you could probably see its eyes like in the back of my throat. And you would think you would be just terrified. But I had this feeling that this was making me whole. This was returning me back to where I came from and needed to be. It was like a cellular repair. And the longer he sat there, the more whole I felt. And now, if it couldn't get any weirder, here's where it gets super weird. After, it was like, he's there, then he's gone, right? It wasn't like a slow departure back. It was just, he was there, and then he was gone. And I was, I don't know, somewhat back to normal, I think. So I sit up, and I look out into the Amazon jungle, and it's has the look of, you know, The Matrix, like the movie where it has all the falling green stuff. The forest and every living aspect in it was in that field. You know, I called it the field. It was the field, and I could see it. I could see the relationship between the plants and the animals, and the sky and the stars and everything. But outside of that field, it was like there was something running outside that field. And I was like, what the fuck is that? And it was hard because it was like there was no light. It was almost just like a shadowed figure, and it was a little boy. And I was like, do I gotta go get this little boy? Like, is this little boy in harm? Is he trapped outside? And I realized that was, now I didn't have his name there. My son's name is Duke, but I realized that was my son who was outside the matrix, so to speak. And I was like, oh shit, he needs to cross over. I need to go, I gotta cross him over. And that was the last ayahuasca trip I did in Peru. I bookended it back in Winnipeg, but nothing like that with the reptile plant object and seeing my son outside the matrix. Nothing that intense happened. So when I came back to Winnipeg, remember I told the girl in the relationship, you gotta be gone. So she was gone. And what I thought was cool, fun, interesting about my life, and there was a lot of things that were cool, fun, and interesting about my life, I had zero interest in it. The thought of partying, the thought of, even I was embarrassed. I had a nightclub. It was like, what the hell is this? I'm the creator of people's demise, so to speak, right? And one thing I learned was about the relationships I had to maintain with my family, from the connectedness of my family was a little bit splintered. There was always somewhat infighting. People weren't getting along, and I was very impartial. I was just a busy guy, and I didn't really care. I was like, oh, you guys aren't talking now? Oh, you guys, well, okay, whatever. It almost became my weird life mission that I was like, I gotta repair these people's relationships. And I just kind of became, including my own relationships with them. And that's why they would all say that I'm a different person, because I didn't really like my dad and I, we were just normal, but I saw him differently after Peru. I was like, I have to connect I realized he brought me over, right? It's not just some guy who, had a job and put food on the table and, didn't do this or did do that. No. This was the guy who brought me over. Same with my mom. I was just like, if you were asking me how many times I thought of my mom and dad in my 20s and 30s, I would say almost zero. The thought of phoning them or like, hey, what's going on? Maybe that's a 20-year-old, 30-year-old thing, or I don't know. But when I came back, it was a must connect, because I realized I owe my existence within this matrix to them. They brought me over. And now, the craziest part about all this is that if I got back in July, I brought Duke over by the following June. So there was basically a summer of, I don't know. I don't even know what the hell I was doing. But by June of the next following year, Duke was born. That same kid that was blacked out outside the matrix, outside that energy grid that was bouncing around. It's like, who's that? And I brought him over. And one thing's for sure, without ayahuasca, that never would happen. I just wouldn't have saw the need. I wouldn't have seen him, obviously. I wouldn't have connected with my parents in the sense that they brought me over. I wouldn't have really cared if the family was fractured. I probably still would have been in my old life, kind of partying and living for the moment, not really contributing to anything, not adding value to anyone. In fact, I was probably a net loss to most people's, to most of my family. And I like to think that that's different now. And being a human that's experienced ayahuasca, all the turmoil I see in the world now, it's so sad because I know none of it would exist if everyone did ayahuasca. This world, and maybe that's where we got to get to, but I know that this world would be almost a spiritual utopia if everyone did ayahuasca.
Lindareo boca blanca, cura cura mis amigos. Ay na nay na nay na nay nay, ay na nay